Welcome back to the Overwatch Contenders Overview. I'm Syphyt, and today I'm joined by Kenobi, and we'll be talking about Chinese Contenders, most notably LGE.Huya and T1W coming into the Pacific Showdown. First segment of the show is for all the people that just want to know the bare bones of Chinese Contenders. Kenobi, what can you tell me about T1W and LGE.Huya?
So T1W and LGE.Huya are actually two very interesting teams and actually kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to coming in from last season. Last season for T1W, they were your champions. They went undefeated except for losing one single map in the grand finals to Flag Gaming. They're the first ever Chinese team, all Chinese team, I should say, to win a Chinese Contenders matchup. So they were coming in to a season that was a lot stronger than the previous one. Last season in Chinese Contenders, it was a very weak season, probably the weakest, if not the weakest of every season before that. And they kind of just ran through it. And now coming into this season, it was very much an idea of, is this the same team that won the last season, right? Can you repeat this kind of basically unprecedented perfect season that they almost got? And they really didn't. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but they really struggled a lot throughout this season. They were, they ran through the group stages pretty easily, but once it got to the playoffs and the grand finals and the semifinals, it wasn't looking as good because at the moment right now for T1W, they are very kind of allergic to playing Micha on Doomfist. They don't want to, they want to stick to GOATs. And Micha, as good as his Doomfist is, his Zarya, not even close. And then for LGE.Huya, you have this team that kind of came out of nowhere, really, Chase. I mean, at the time that their roster was announced, if you had told me this team is going to 4-0 T1W in the grand finals, I probably would have slapped you across the face because there's no way, with everyone that was in the Chinese Contenders scene at the moment, there's no way that this team was going to be as good as they were. But they managed to just play a phenomenal game around this one player called Haker, a Sombra one-trick, if you will. Played literally nothing but Sombra the entire season, and the way that the team played around him, understanding the win condition that is Sombra, understanding Haker's ability to farm up EMP very quickly, and the way that they were able to play around Haker as a win condition, the team did a very good job. And this is a team that kept only 3 pieces from last season. They kept only Kami, Lengsa, and Mali. LGE as a team throughout Chinese Contenders has only 1 map win in the quarterfinals. They always make it to the playoffs, but in the last 3 seasons before this one, only 1 map win. So that's a 3-0, 3-0, and a 3-1. Not looking too good when you think of their playoff chances in the past. And then they come in this season and they just go gangbusters on the entirety of the league. They win pretty convincingly in the grand finals. Their only really speed bump, if I would say, was BLG in the semifinals. So this team, very, very good and very surprising for, I think, a lot of us who follow Chinese Contenders didn't think they would ever be this good.
Our next segment is going to be all about surprises. Kenobi, what surprised you this season?
So one of the surprises for me, and probably not in the best way, Chase, would have to be GZ Academy, who, when this roster was announced, everyone said this is a Pacific Showdown team off the bat. On paper, this team is nuts. You have Nero, you have Maui, MG, who last season was the best off-tank in China, Tizzy, Overwatch caliber player, Century, Rise. Everywhere you look on this team, you have players that are pretty good, I would say, and they just weren't able to make it happen and ended up getting relegated, only winning 1 series throughout the entirety of their group, and it just looked completely disjointed. It looked like it was just 6 solo queue players playing on the same team and trying to win, and they weren't able to do anything. They just looked completely lost. And for a team that everyone was thinking, oh, this is just a lock, for the Pacific Showdown, maybe even the championship, to not even make it to the playoffs is incredibly surprising to me. And they have a lot of work to do going into next season to try and make this team a lot better than it was last season, because, and that's even thinking that if they get back to Contenders, they still have to go through trials. So they have a lot of questions about this team that everyone thought was going to be one of the best in the region.
Kenobi, was there a standout player this season? What player impressed you the most?
The player I think that impressed me the most has to be Haker on LGE.Huya, arguably being one of the best Sombras in the region and in the world at this point in Contenders outside of OWL. You have Doha, who is on Element Mystic, and they might play each other in Showdown, but Haker basically played only Sombra, has played nothing else this season, and the way that he was able to play Sombra, his EMP charge, the way that he uses E as like his translocator more as like a movement ability, the style in which he plays, it's very different to the standard, put your translocator in the back, buy a health pack, go up, farm some EMP charge, and then go back. He was playing it very aggressively, and Val's mentioned this term to me. He said they kind of play it like Sombra 76, right? It's like a Soldier 76, and the way that you can adapt his play style around the way the team of LG wants to play, I think is very good. And it's not just a Sombra one trick. He can play very different styles of Sombra depending on what his team wants to do. So I think Haker came out of really nowhere and showed to us that he is arguably one of the best Sombras in the world outside of OWL.
Now we're on to predictions for the next season. Kenobi, what are you expecting to happen in 2019 Season 2?
The biggest prediction that I have is that I think BLG, the Bilibili Gaming Squad, who is the academy team of the Hangzhou Spark, I think they are going to come back in a very big way in Season 2. They were very close to getting into Showdown. The unfortunate thing for them is that in Week 5, they were playing T1W, and they lost pretty convincingly to that T1W squad, which means that they were on the same side of the bracket as LGE. And arguably, the grand finals of this season was Bilibili versus LGE in that semifinals, and it was the closest match we had. And I am not scared about saying that LGE and BLG are the two best teams in the region, even though BLG isn't going to Showdown. I think BLG showed me specifically in that semifinal that they are the second best team in the region. They put up a fight, whereas T1W kind of rolled over a little bit for LGE. So I think BLG comes back in a big way next season. They've had a season to mesh together. They're all Chinese. They're all staying on the same squad. They have Shy, who is probably one of my favorite players ever, the clutchest player in Chinese Overwatch right now. And I think going into next season, that is a team that I think contests LGE.
Here's the big one, Kenobi. It's Showdown talk. What do you think it's going to take for T1W and LGE.Huya to make it far in Showdown?
So for T1W, they are arguably one of, if not the worst teams at Showdown right now, unfortunately. With what I've seen from them in the playoffs, I can't really put them any higher than like top 4. And that's bare, like they're 5th or 6th, which means that if they get to 5th or 6th, they are costing China a gauntlet spot, which would be pretty disastrous, especially with the talent that China has. I think you really losing that spot is going to kind of screw over some of the better teams like BLG in China, who definitely should be going to this tournament but can't because they had a bit of an issue with T1W at the end of the group stage. But I think for T1W, what I want to see from them, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is that I want to see them play DPS comps, right? Play wacky stuff. And I know Joe is going to get upset that I said wacky and zany when I talk about China. Joe is Volumel, by the way, but I want to see them kind of play more DPS centric compositions. Don't rely on the Zarya goats because you're going to get smashed by every team there. Play Doomfist Sombra, play quad DPS, just play anything that allows you to take Micha off of Zarya. And I think that's their win condition, is you let Micha play Doomfist. He's one of the best Doomfists in the world. You let him do that, and then I think you have a much better chance than if you go in there and you just play the 3-3 mirror and you get absolutely crushed by the rest of the teams. And I think for LGE, the thing about them is they haven't really shown us any other compositions besides this Somber Goats composition, right? They've shown a little bit on Control Center where they put their other DPS player Kami onto Pharah, and they play sort of a 2-2-2 style, but mostly it's the Somber Goats. And I think the team that they could actually play pretty well against is Element Mystic, who I think is one of the best teams, if not the best team at the tournament right now, and that's really going to be their biggest hurdle, is Element Mystic. And I think the Somber Goats, it's going to be Haker versus Doha, but I think if you get Haker in a position where he can play these different Somber styles that the Korean teams maybe haven't seen before. Haker does a lot of things that when I watch, I say, wow, I didn't know that was possible. You know, this is absolutely blowing my mind. And they do in Element Mystic have a very good Sombra in Doha, but I don't know if Doha has seen the types of things that Haker has seen. Maybe they're going to have, you know, tape to run on him, but I think the ability for LGE to kind of switch up their ability to play different types of Sombra, you know, Haker can play this frontline Sombra 76 type of style. He can play the sit back and just farm up EMP until we win conditions slow style. LGE can, while they are a one-trick team, can switch up their styles, and I think Element Mystic has a very strict style, and I think that leads a little bit more towards LGE having the advantage.
Kenobi, our last segment is going to be the match to watch.
The match that I think everyone should watch if you're new to Chinese Contenders and you want to see the best of the best duke it out, and no bias because I casted this game, but I think it is LGE versus BLG in that semi-final spot. It's the two best teams in China, without a doubt, fighting each other. A very close series, goes all 5 games. It could have gone to 6 games, and while we were casting, actually, me and Rapture were thinking, wow, this could actually go to 7 if they draw again. It's a very close series that I think really showcases the best of LGE, who is the best team in China, and BLG, who is the second best team in China. And it kind of shows a little bit the difference between the Somber Goats and the different styles of Somber Goats that LGE can play. And then you have Bilibili, who is this very, very strong Goats team, and that managed to kind of force LGE to adapt to a different style of play, which I think is one of the coolest things in Overwatch, is forcing your enemy to do something that they aren't comfortable with and not letting them play their game. And for a good moment there, BLG looks like they're going to be able to stop LGE, but then LGE comes back, They knock down BLG pretty hard. Hager takes over the game with Kami and with Molly and Lengsa, and I think that's the matchup that if you want to see the best of the best from Chinese Contenders, I think that's the VOD that you pop in, you watch over, and it's not going to be the cleanest goats or not the cleanest Sombra goats. There's mistakes and stuff, everyone makes mistakes, but it is probably the best showcase of Chinese Contenders, and I think that's the VOD and that's the match where you can look at it and say both of these teams are really good, and if they were both going to Showdown, not just LGE, China would have a very good chance of having at least maybe another gauntlet spot going into the gauntlet coming out of Pacific Showdown.
Thank you guys for watching this Chinese episode of the Contenders Overview. Huge thanks goes out to Kenobi. His Twitter is KenobiCast. And as always, Broadcast.gg for hosting this. If you guys have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments and let me know what you think.